what is the Bohemian Grove's patron bird? It's the owl. In my book Long Walkers, Tom, the sacrifice that took place to when John Paul, 22nd, passed away, there were two owls present at one of the most demonic rituals in the history of the world, observed by a multi-star general who gave me the blow-by-blow, literally account, and they actually summoned a live giant that was, I guess, somewhere around 14, 16 feet, and fed it a live child in a sacrifice. Now, here's what's interesting, and again, ladies and gentlemen, Tom and I have not discussed this off-air, is the Navajo word for the giants was shaman, S-H-A-W-M-A-N. The fascinating thing about it is we get the word shaman, and the original shamans were all the giants. And guess what they bartered for to give the secret knowledge to the people that wanted? They asked for the children's life so they could eat them. Isn't that fascinating? This is coming from one of the oldest living Navajos in Navajo land. So the word shaman, in other words, like we would say Bigfoot, Yeti, whatever, Shangdu, whatever they are called all over the world, but the point is the word shaman literally comes from shaman, which means the giants. And the giants ate the people, and you can't go to the desert Southwest, Mr. Legends, without one factor. These these entities, the giants, were voracious in their appetite, and they literally just cut a wide swath, and in order to get secret knowledge, sacrifice had to be made, their children had to be given, and the shaman, or actually now the shaman, were more than willing to do that. So I thought that was a fascinating bit of information I was completely unaware of until it was made known to me.
Well, the bottom line, Steve, all of our experiences on Mount Graham and since Mount Graham, and by the way, we haven't just interviewed the Vatican's astronomers. We have a whole list of experts from around the world. In fact, when we release the book, Exo Vaticana, we're going to offer more than 20 solid hours of audio recordings from interviews with experts all around the world, including people in government with high security clearance levels. It's just the most it's the biggest thing that I've ever been part of. And I really thought that was true with Petrus Romanus, and we wouldn't have written this without Petrus Romanus. And by the way, Petrus Romanus is intricately involved in this whole issue because with the coming of an alien savior, he's going to have the person on earth that has the ear of the religious community celebrating his arrival and pointing the world towards him, and that's going to be Petrus Romanus, in my belief. And what we're still waiting for Petrus Romanus to make his presence known. We know that he is alive because according to a 900-year-old prophecy, the prophecy of the popes that was kept inside the Vatican's vaults for hundreds of years, the very next pope, following Pope Benedict XVI, will be the final one on that list, and many experts interpret the prophecy as suggesting that this is going to be the false prophet of end times biblical fame. And I think that with everything else we're seeing going on around the world, that is very, very likely to be the case, and at any time, at any moment, that personality is going to appear. We can talk more about that later if we want to, but I don't want to get off the subject we're on right now, because right now what our research is leading us to believe is that the social, spiritual, and academic intellectuals that are busy establishing Roman Catholic doctrine around either what they secretly know, and that's what I happen to believe, or at least what they suspect, if taken for face value. It appears to show that they believe, again, this is not speculation, this is after we talk to the astronomers, they believe that we are close to integration with intelligent alien life, and they also believe that this disclosure could ultimately reconfigure established doctrines of science, religion, salvation. They furthermore, some of them believe that in the very near future, an alien influence is going to arrive on Earth, led by a man of unusual intelligence, and this person, if you just read what they are saying, is going to be the champion of a new gospel. Now, that's astonishing, right? That sounds incredible, and yet this is out of their own mouths, and in some cases what they've written and published over the last couple of years. So, but when you think of that, and then you think of the scriptures, which foretold of an otherworldly leader's coming, an alien rite, paganism's ultimate incarnation, the beast of Revelation 13, and the scriptures tell us a lot about him. First of all, it says he's going to arrive at the end of time, and that day is going to be accompanied, according to Luke 21, by, quote, fearful sights and great signs from heaven. And then 2 Thessalonians tells us that that wicked one will be revealed, whose coming is after the working of Satan, with all power and signs and lying wonders. And for this cause God shall send them strong delusion, that they should believe a lie, that they all might be damned who believed not the truth, but had pleasure in unrighteousness. That's 2 Thessalonians 2, 8 through 12. So the coming of the Antichrist is described, connected to lying wonders, and strong delusion from heaven. And then finally, the prophet Daniel, I think, provides one of the greatest comments as to the identity of the coming of the false Savior when he says in the 11th chapter, verse 39 of Daniel, that the Antichrist will be a worshiper of the God of forces, a God whom his fathers knew not. And that is a text that can literally be interpreted from the Hebrew to mean an alien God. So I, for one, believe now all of the intel that we have been gathering, and we have literally thousands and thousands and thousands of pages of intelligence documents now, so far, plus what we're confirming right now, plus what the Jesuit on duty at the day we were there told us and we filmed, plus what the Vatican astronomers afterward have told us, including interviews with Guy Cosmonalgo, points to the astronomers on Mount Graham, and those also in Italy, and others at the Large Binocular Telescope. I know this is astonishing. I just have to say it. Some people are just going to shake their head and think, how in the world can this guy believe this? But they're going to have to read the full report when it's available in April. It'll be difficult for them to walk away from this statement. They are using Lucifer's infrared technology, I believe, to study either a series of planets that once or currently are under that powerful angel that was known as Lucifer, or they're watching something like an armada of objects that are moving along a trajectory towards Earth that is somehow connected to Lucifer. And this goes back to what Catholic theologian Father Malachi Martin said before he died, or he was murdered in 1999, when he hinted at extraterrestrial disclosure and that it was soon forthcoming. And he did that more than once. Steve, you know the story. I know it. Doug and Joe, you probably know it. But for those people that are listening to this show, this was in 1997. It was on Coast to Coast AM. Art Bell was interviewing Father Malachi Martin, and he asked Martin why the Vatican was heavily invested in the study of deep space at the Mount Graham Observatory that Chris Putnam and I just visited in September. And Malachi Martin, first of all, he was uniquely qualified. He was a phenomenal polyglot. He'd done all kinds of top-level research and work for the Vatican, including interpreting the Dead Sea Scrolls. I mean, he was not a Johnny-come-lately. He was the personal secretary to Augustine Bay, the top Jesuit. So for that matter, he was a personal friend of the Pope's. And when he was asked that question by Art Bell, why is the Vatican on top of Mount Graham studying deep space? Here's what Malachi Martin said. He said, because the mentality among those who are at the highest levels of Vatican administration and geopolitics know what's going on in space and what's approaching us could be of great importance in coming years. So, and of course, that was followed subsequent interviews with Malachi talking about this mysterious something that was in the heaven that was approaching the earth from the north. Some people say that he might have been an oblique reference to an end-time portent, which is a Catholic prophecy of the Great Comet. But people that are familiar with Malachi believe that he was referring to a near-future arrival of alien intelligence. An interesting note, when we asked Father Guy Cosmonalgo what he thought of Malachi's claims, Cosmonalgo actually seemed to be upset by Malachi, seemed to be miffed by him, and here's what he said to us, quote, I have heard stories about the late Malachi Martin which make me rather suspicious of statements that come from him. I was at the observatory in the 1990s, and he never visited us, nor had anything to do with us, end quote. So that reaction, seems really consistent with how a lot of other Catholic priests despised Malachi's willingness to disclose what Rome wanted buried, especially the satanic cabal within the Jesuit order that Malachi Martin wrote about in all of his books.
Well, that would definitely not endear you to the ruling power, the ruling elite, and I think it's critical that people understand. Most people don't get whacked, assassinated, or murdered because they're far off the mark. It's because they're directly overhead. Now, Tom, I want to make this clear because we haven't been on for a number of years. Ladies and gentlemen, you can go look up the CERN, C-E-R-N-E, Abbas giant. And basically, this is a 180-foot tall chalk figure, and it's carrying a 120-foot club. Why is this critical, Tom, what we're talking about? When you and I went on, I've got to make this point. I feel it's so critical. When you and I went on talking about the last multi-hour shows we did, you made a statement that on a certain date we would see these giants. Now, isn't it interesting? I got a message from the people at the in Switzerland when they actually were opening up the portals, claiming they saw giant faces and it scared them. So what I'm saying is when you went on record saying by such and such a date, and I don't remember it, to the day was the day, and this is in Great Britain, when multiple policemen responded to reports in the area of the CERN Abbas giant, A-B-B-A-S. It's C-E-R-N-E, Abbas giant. Now you're talking about bringing it right fast forward. We are talking about a global agreement amongst the most powerful people in the world to welcome Lucifer back to the planet. They're using all the technology of the fallen ones, all the technology of the ancient ones, and all that they're able to grasp, acquire, steal, murder for, or get in any way to make the fulfillment of the rule and reign of Lucifer on earth pertinent and in a very timely way. And so we're there, and I would tell you this, all my sources say what's coming in from beyond the stars is an armada. It's not about Planet X, though that exists. It's not about Nibiru. It's not about Gabriel's fist. It's about this invasionary armada. And just so you know, and Tom, you had it too, I think on your website, but there was a tongue-in-cheek proposal for Death Star. You know, it was supposed to cost $2 quadrillion, blah, blah, blah. It would be interesting for people to know that we, the United States, has a deep space-based assets watching exactly that. And there are Russians and American scientists, I think even Hoagland claims, and rightfully so, that Phobos is artificial. So we've got all of everyone, everywhere, I'm just making a blanket statement now, who is aware of what's coming upon the earth, looking. And remember that famous prophecy in Obadiah, though you set your nest amongst the stars, yet will I bring you down. And I think what we're seeing right now is a whole lot of nests no longer being feathered, but being dumped out. And I think that the woe unto the inhabitants of the earth is coming, and the Vatican knows it. Obviously, the German interests, which are nothing more than, in many cases, if you will, the final Reich, the alien Nazi consortium, and it exists. So the point is that everything you're saying about Mount Graham and then the other Native Americans, different tribes, what you just are discussing for Mount Graham, pretty much defining it to in Arizona, the same myths, the same legends, and the same expectations are throughout the entire Native American culture, whether you go to the Northeast, New England, the Algonquin, the Iroquois, everybody that's out in around the Great Lakes and further east, across the desert Southwest, into Nevada. You can't get away from the giants, the alien connection, and the intel. And I thought that was fascinating. When you just said that a minute ago, you and I caught a lot of flack for the last decade, 2 decades, whatever. But now everything we've talked about is pointing to that there is a great expectation. The only ones I see living in denial are people that simply don't want to embrace what you and I and others are laying out as is almost irrefutable evidence that this is what they're going for.
Well, sure, and I gave up trying to explain myself to anybody a long time ago. I always know any book I write, anything I say, any show I do with you or anybody else, it's going to send a certain community out there into a demonic frenzy once again, and some of them pretend to be Christians. But there's nothing you can do for them except keep doing what we do, keep speaking the truth. And, of course, that itself is a sign of the end times, knowing that Lucifer will come, or Satan will come down in great wrath, knowing that he hath but a short time. He's doing now the same thing he did when Jesus came. The Pharisees, they would try to set Jesus up, right? They would study his words to try to take something that he would say and take it out of context so they could trap him in his words, and he was too smart for them. And you look around us right now, every single show we do, every single thing we write, there's that community out there that tries to take anything we say or do, take it out of context, try to make it sound like we're, but But whatever. Jesus said that the Pharisees were of their father, the devil. He said if they hate me, they're going to hate you too. So we'll just keep doing what we do. They'll keep doing what they do. And one of these days, the judgment seat of Christ will happen and the sheep are separated from the goats. There is a mass or something moving towards Earth with a definite arrival destination. And I believe that it can only be seen using Lucifer-like infrared technology. This is where a great deal of our research is going to point. It's being monitored from Mount Graham. And by the way, Steve, it rings really true to what I was told from Phobos. Remember him?
Yes.
I don't get to talk to him no more for reasons I can't explain. I haven't actually for a few years. But years before this infrared technology was brought to Mount Graham in the form of the Lucifer device, remember, and this a couple of years before the Vatican spokesperson started talking so much about our space brothers, he had said, when you see the Vatican start talking about this, know that the clock is ticking down. Remember, you and I did shows a decade ago talking about that. And almost right after, Cosmonalgo put out his little booklet talking about our space brothers. Gabriel Funes went on into the media talking about our space brothers. But at the same time, before infrared technology came to Mount Graham in the form of the Lucifer device, Phobos had told me something that I then speculated about in the book The Ahriman Gate. This was written in 2005, so it was years before Lucifer went to Mount Graham. And what he had inferred was the governments of the world were secretly using infrared to monitor a hidden UFO armada parked beyond view of our normal telescopes. And I wrote about that. You can read about it. It's like page 180 through 250 or whatever it is of the Ahriman Gate, where I literally put into a fictional account, but exactly what Phobos had told me. Well, now it turns out that the information that I received from him and used as an outline in the Ahriman Gate might have been truer and way ahead of what I had understood at the time. And furthermore, that now seems to be set to start unfolding in the year 2013. The bottom line is this, so I can get past this point. I'm looking at the clock. I realize we're going to go to a break in just a moment. We intend to provide files, images, over 20 hours of audio interviews with leading experts, private PDFs sent to us from Vatican astronomers, even video that will more than suggest that Rome is paving the way for the imminent, widespread acceptance of an alien savior, and there's reasons why they are doing that is beyond their control. They also believe it's going to lead the masses to believe that God's going to use these extraterrestrials in a way that he used them once before. In other words, they're interpreting them like we would think of as angels, as his agents in creation. And according to the Vatican's top theologians, this is going to be presented in a way that it does not immediately require us to explicitly renounce our faith in God, but it is going to require radical reinterpretation of Christianity as somehow this information is presented. It's also going to be useful for establishing a global system and religion, another goal the Vatican has emphasized lately. Or as one of our consultants wrote, the ripple effect is going to eliminate, I'm quoting now, any discernible obstacle to articulating a global religion that honors the cosmologies of all faiths, united as they are under the reality of an extraterrestrial influence, end quote.
Wow. I feel like the little kid in the back of the classroom, kind of diminutive, raising my hand, Mr. Horn. Just to be clear here, we are facing what I guess the only way I describe it would be a massive deception that's being planned. Is that a fair statement? I guess. In other words, what the people of the world are about to see, about to witness, is a false coming, perhaps, or a false second coming, or is that too simplistic of an explanation?
Well, no, that's absolutely what we're talking about. It will be part of a.
Go ahead. I'm sorry, Tom. I didn't mean to talk over you. It's part of the Great Deception. The word Antichrist means in place of. It doesn't mean against. So the bottom line is what the Vatican's doing is shoehorning the idea that, number one, the aliens can be redeemed, and number two, they're going to spring at the right moment the fact that God is an alien power, that Jesus was either a hologram or a genetically altered super alien that came to save us, and that's the ultimate deception, Jug. It's not a false rapture or anything. It is basically the total deception. Jesus made it easy when he said this: I came and you received me not. Another will come claiming to be me. Him you will receive. So it's going to be in place of, not out of place. In other words, they're going to substitute the alien God for the real God, and people are going to be deceived by it. Is that accurate, Tom?
That's accurate, and furthermore, you can, if people want to Google this stuff, just type in Funis' name, type in our space brother, read what the Vatican is openly saying through its mouthpieces right now, in which they're saying that not only do aliens exist, but they might be closer to God than we are, morally superior to us, and they will be coming here to evangelize us, to show us a better way. That's the reason why the Vatican's top theologians are saying that we won't immediately have to renounce our faith in God, but once we understand the gospel as they do, since they're closer to God than we are. We fell, they didn't, they're morally superior to us. They're going to show us a better way, a clearer way, and they're going to be led by some type of a leader who will, I guess, be held up as the Savior persona. There's a doctrine we won't go into, but it's called many Christs, and this is very popular to the Vatican's astrobiologists right now. The idea that Christ might have been manifested in many ways on many different worlds to all kinds of intelligent beings, but those who haven't fallen have remained fully in His grace. They're not fallen like we are. They're unfallen. They're superior to us morally and spiritually, and they're the evangelists that are coming to the earth to show us poor, dumb, stupid, lost earthlings a better way to get to God, and they'll be doing that through their champion. That's exactly what they are saying, and it isn't just the documents we've received or the interviews that we've done. You can Google this and read this stuff for yourself. It's exactly what they're saying. So
Mr.
it is
Horn.
a great deception, and it is imminent.
Yeah, you're exactly right. You can just look today at Fox News. Tom Cruise, there's a headline, Tom Cruise thinks he's on a planet to fight aliens, according to his book, where he says that the aliens are going to come to protect humanity from those who are bent on destroying this planet. I mean, that's just from a headline from today.
Well, I was only going to say, as I felt like we were transitioning there at the top of the hour, that I think it's going to be difficult for anybody to survey our final report in April. And by the way, it will be in a book called Exo Vaticana. And the reason is quite simple, because you can't go over 500 or 600 pages of information and do it as coherently when you're on the radio, or at least I can't. I'm not that articulate. I have to sit down. I write different, and I think different when I'm writing, and I'm doing that type of research. But it's that we're hoping to have it done in April, and I'm telling you that I guarantee you that nobody will read that and further doubt that someone or something is operating right now outside the average man's purview and in league with at least some of the world's elite, and smack dab in the middle of that conspiracy is not only NASA and other aeronautic and space administrations like the European Space Agency, but the Vatican. And in some ways, that makes perfect sense, really. I mean, official disclosure of extraterrestrial intelligence and habitable alien worlds, which, by the way, is likely to be announced in this year, in 2013, according to scientists like Abel Mendez, who runs the Planetary Habitability Laboratory at the University of Puerto Rico, who wrote an article just last week saying it's going to be announced in 2013, and he said it's going to have a profound effect on humanity. So this isn't just Tom Horn. This is experts in this field that are now admitting this. And it is going to have a profound effect on humanity. That's going to be true psychologically and spiritually. And due to the nature of man, why is the Vatican involved? Because most of the world's peoples are going to be looking for traditional religious leaders to put the revelation of exo-worlds and aliens into context. Well, as the most powerful church on earth, with its own diplomatic corps of ambassadors posted throughout the industrialized nations of the world, the Vatican is not only uniquely positioned, but as we intend to show, they've been actively preparing for this moment. In fact, you could go back even a decade. According to Monsignor Corrado Balducci, who during his life, he was an exorcist for the Vatican, he was a theologian for the Vatican, he was a member of the Vatican Curia, that's the governing body at Rome. But he was also the official mouthpiece of the church concerning the reality, not speculation, the reality of aliens, and not the reality of aliens someday discovered, but the reality of aliens on Earth now. And the Vatican, he said, was closely following the alien presence on Earth now, and this is according to their own spokesman, using its embassies around the world to quietly compile material evidence on the extraterrestrials and their mission. And the Vatican, now he died a few years ago, but the Vatican has never refuted that revelation from Balducci. And in fact, in further evidence of the covert research, in 1976, Steve, do you remember there was a high-profile attorney by the name of Daniel Sheehan? Remember him?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Harvard, government law, degrees in government law. He was the legal counsel on a lot of famous cases, the Karen Silkwood case, the Iran-Contra affair, 3 Mile Island, Watergate. So this guy was really, high profile. In fact, he got funds from Lawrence Rockefeller. He was the attorney that represented Dr. John Mack when Mack was about to lose his position in the university, his tenure, because he was talking about people who were being abducted by aliens, and it was Sheehan that represented him and kept him from losing his position over there. But Sheehan was the one, he tried to crack open the secret UFO files that are being held in the vaults of the Vatican Library. Now, if anybody should have been able to get access to those files, it would have been Sheehan, because in addition to his impressive legal profession, he was the general counsel to the United States Jesuit headquarters in Washington, D.C. And furthermore, he made a request to the Vatican for the Vatican's secret files. And when he did, he made the request at the behest of the United States government and at the behest of the President of the United States at that time, President Jimmy Carter, 1977. And Carter had asked to have the information regarding the existence of extraterrestrial intelligence and the UFO phenomenon that was being kept in the vaults of the Vatican made known to the President, not to the public, but just to the President. And so agents of the government asked Sheehan, as the general counsel to the United States Jesuit headquarters there at the national office in Washington, D.C., whether or not he could get access to that section of the Vatican Library in Rome that contained the information on extraterrestrial intelligence and the UFO phenomenon. So Sheehan, he goes to Father Bill Davis, who was the director of the national office of the Jesuits in D.C. at that time, if he could follow that process, make it an official request through the Jesuit headquarters, and he got permission from Bill Davis, official approval, and so he undertook the process. And you can still hear some of the radio shows and stuff that Sheehan did at the time where he talked about this whole process, how surprised he was, and how surprised Father Davis was, that not even they would be allowed to put their eyes on the secret information that the Vatican had on the alien agenda on Earth now, not just someday maybe, on Earth now, in that part of the Vatican Library. And so they were so surprised, they actually sent the request the second time, and they sent it directly to the Jesuit, who is the head of the Vatican Library, and explained to him that in case he didn't get it the first time, this was an official request from the Jesuit headquarters in Washington, D.C. It was an official request from the Congressional Research Service of the Library of Congress. It was a personal request from the President of the United States and the United States Congress, who wanted to purview that information, and they were certain, right, that under some set of circumstances, those files would be made available, and they were flatly turned down by the Vatican. They were told absolutely not. Nobody is going to get to look at this information. Well, by the way, if you don't have information, you don't turn down letting somebody like that look at it. You just simply tell them it doesn't exist. It's a figment of your imagination. That's not what they were told. They were told it exists. You're not seeing it ever. So there's a lot of evidence to support what Balducci was claiming, and that was the Vatican was using its amazing resources around the world to gather intelligence information on what was going on Earth right now. By the way, you mentioned a little earlier, Steve, you mentioned Alaska. At some point during this show, I want to give you an update on an investigation that you and I did some years ago that happened to kind of turn around and come back into the picture a little more recently.
Well, I think I think this is going the way it's supposed to go. And I want to share something, Tom, that's critical. You put it up on your website. I put it up on my website. The story of the conehead skulls being found in Mexico and the claim that it was done by parents. Let me tell you something. I've had guys who are some of the best anatomical sculptors in the world and forensic guys, and when they rebuild that conehead skull that was shown